Hi guys, Mike Lambo here, and I'm going to play today with some instruction battle number 7 of my Battles of the American Civil War game. So this is the Battle of Wilson's Creek from the 10th of August 1861, and I'm going to be playing as the Confederates against the Union, and on the next page I would be able to play the Union against Confederates in the same battle on the same or very similar map, so I just rotated. Every map has its own AI specifically for the battle in question. Now I've chosen this battle because there's a good range of unit types, but it's also still a fairly small battle in a way, and it's one I hope to get through reasonably quickly. So once you're up and running with this game and you know the rules, it usually plays in, quickest probably 20 minutes or so, up to about 40 max, so around about half an hour per battle really. Once you know the rules and get a good feel for how the AI works and so on. I wanted this to be fluid and nice and quick to play. So let's start with setup. So over here it tells me that I get 3 infantry, I get 1 cavalry, 1 artillery and a general. So I've got those counters out already. It tells me that I should place 1 unit on the bottom of each area. So the map is split into 6 areas and each area is basically a column. So I can put my units wherever I like. I don't know how the AI is going to set up yet, although I can have a sneaky peek to see what they're going to do. And generally their artillery is going to be on 1, 3 and 6, so you expect on the higher ground. The general then going to be somewhere between them, and the infantry will then fill in the gaps, as well as being 1 hex below the general. So protecting their general. That's because the objective here is for me to kill the Union general. So that's all I have to do. Okay, you just have to kill the general. There's a couple of reminders of the rules here about how to operate the AI, which must be new to this particular map from previous maps. I've done that just to help players ease their way in the earlier maps or earlier battles. So I have to, it says here General Lyon, and it does explain in the rules that I appreciate that not all these leaders that I refer to in the maps were necessarily generals, but the counter is a general counter, and I just wanted to keep it simple, so rather than have lots of counters for lots of different ranks, so I've just called the leader of each battle the general, which most probably were. Here it says General Lyon launched a surprise Union attack on the Confederate camp at Wilson's Creek, and it says Lyon was killed and the Union retreated back to Rolla. So let's set up then. So I don't really know where their general's going to be, but obviously my aim is to get up there as soon as possible. It's quite useful to have units next to your general. I'm going to put my artillery on high ground as well. I'm going to keep my cavalry back here in the trees, probably in reserve to start with, and then I'm going to put my infantry sort of around the general like that. So that's how I'm going to set up. 1 unit, as it said, on the bottom of each area. The AI then, the artillery then, it says place randomly at the top of area 1, 3 or 6. So I'll just roll a die until I get a 1, 3 or 6, which shouldn't take long. There's a 3 there, that's the one I rolled. So let's put their artillery on 3, and the other one was going to be 1 or 6, wasn't it? So there's a 6. Let's stick that over there. Okay, so that's their artillery. They get 2 of those. It tells you over here, artillery 2, it says set up, place randomly at the top of area 1, 3 or 6. I've done that. The general, it says place randomly at the area of 2, 4 or 5. So again, we'll just roll until we see one of those come out the bottom. There's a 5 there, so let's put their general at 5. So he's up there in the river hex, or around the river, I guess. And then the 4 infantry that they get, it says place on the 3 remaining vacant top hexes. So we're going to put one of them here, one of them here, one of them here, and it says on the 1 hex below the general. So they're protecting him, of course, because our job is to kill him. Right, their job, the AI's job, is to prevent us from doing that. I have 10 turns to do it. Now you can see the counters themselves have steps on them. So you can see the infantry are all step 4, or strength 4 if you like. Cavalry start at 3, the general is always a 1-step unit, and artillery always 2 steps. So they always start at their maximum strength. ratings. Again, and they're reduced as they take hits as we go through. And we've got terrain on the map. You can see here, we've got high ground, which are these sort of rocky type hexes, and then you've got sort of second layer higher grounds, I've called it, where you've got another hex within the first hex. So there's a couple of those on this map. There's 3 on this map. You've got trees hexes here. You've got roads, which don't generally do too much, although when they bridge a river, that's relevant. We might see how that works a little later on. We've got river hexes themselves. And there are town hexes, though we haven't got one of them on this particular map. All hexes are accessible, so all units types can move into all hexes. Units can generally move and then attack, except artillery, which moves or attacks. So you can do one or the other. And the AI will follow the same rules as the player. And they're sort of built into the AI instructions, if you like. So you'll never be required, for example, to move your AI artillery and then try and fire it. It won't require you to do that. So let's say we've got an individually tailored AI over here for this particular battle. So it's AI, it says here is the Union. So we've done that. We've done the setup, which is again detailed next to the name of each unit type here. And then we've got the units themselves. The player goes first. So I start, which sort of counterbalances the fact that I had to set up first. So I can now have a chance to decide how I'm going to approach the Union general and how I can get rid of him. Now this can be a very quick battle, this one. Obviously we get an opening and we get a chance to take the general out, then we'll do that, and it can finish fairly quickly. What I don't really want to do is get bogged down turn after turn after turn, because the chances are their artillery in particular and their superior numbers in infantry are likely to eat away at my forces. So we'll see how that goes. So what do we do first then? Well, first of all we have to decide or determine which areas I can activate units in. So I always roll 3 dice for that. Okay, so I get 2 3s and a 5. So these numbers relate to the area numbers. So we've got a 3 there, and we've got a 5, and another 3. Okay, so we've got to be just aware of the fact that, you know, we're rolling to see where we can activate those numbers. Now this is quite a big step in terms of how we, you know, the strategies that we use here is quite important. So sorry, just putting a book under the page to take that slight bulge out of there. I usually tack these books down when I play them, but I didn't today, but that's fine. So as I say, determining the areas in which I can, you know, which have the units I want to activate. It's quite an important step. So what happens is I put them on there. The 3 is no good. Duplicates are never any good. You can only activate each area once. So this is quite similar to Battles of Napoleonic Europe for anyone who's played that at this point, but it is slightly different. So I roll 3 and I can put them on there. I don't have to put them. I don't have to keep them. You know, then I decide whether it's any use to me. Now it's quite useful for me, I think, to move those 2 infantry units or activate them. So I'm going to do that, I think. So I'm just going to re-roll the 3. So I can always re-roll as many dice as I want once. I can always do that, regardless of the game state or time or position or whatever. So I could roll 1, 2, re-roll none of them. I could re-roll 1, 2, or 3 of them now. But I have to, if I re-roll, you know, more than one, I have to roll them all together. I can't sort of re-roll that one and think, oh, actually, I want to re-roll that one as well, kind of thing. So you've got to decide. So I'm going to re-roll just the 1, and that's a 1, so that'll go over there, which means I could activate my artillery, which I don't really want to do. It's out of range. You know, the range of units is written in red on the counters, but it's also over here in this table. So artillery have a range of 3, so they can't reach anywhere. Okay? And all units can fire in all directions. Okay? There's no facing or anything like that. But generally it'll be, you know, like that. It's not many battles where you find yourself getting behind people and so on. It's generally a sort of fairly, as indeed the American Civil War was, of course. You know, sort of like lines of infantry standing there shooting at each other. You know, before any kind of modern battle tactics were developed. Rifles had improved, of course, by then from earlier wars such as the Napoleonics, but battle tactics hadn't really moved on with it. So casualties were pretty high, and cavalry were less useful in the, you know, at this point, because rifles were so strong. Range 3, they can't reach, they can't move and then fire, so I'm going to re-roll the one again. So what I can do now is re-roll once. If my general is alive, I can re-roll again. And again, I can re-roll as many as I want, and I can even re-roll the ones that I didn't re-roll last time if I suddenly decide I wanted to or whatever. So again, you re-roll them all at once, and you re-roll however many you want. Okay, but this is the last re-roll, so you get, it's a 2, so it has to go there. Doesn't mean I have to do anything with the units in the areas I activate, but I have to, I can only activate units in those areas. So as I say, you get, you know, whilst your general is alive, which will hopefully be for most, if not all, of the battle, you get 3 chances of re-rolls and locking dice in and so on. So you get, you know, there's plenty of mitigation there, and there's a lot of, there's quite a lot of pushing your luck and risk and reward, especially later in the game where you might need desperately to activate certain units, and risking not being able to activate other units because you are re-rolling desperately for certain things. We'll see how it goes as we move. So I'm going to, I can activate mine in any order, the areas, although once I activate an area, I have to then activate all the units in that area. Obviously, at the moment, there's only 1 unit in each area, but I'm going to activate this one first, and all I'm going to do with him is push him up there. Remember, his range is 2, so he can't actually reach anybody anyway. He can't attack. So I'm just going to move him there, because I'm going to take a little bit of an aggressive stance to start with. I'm going to move this unit into these trees here along the road. And again, they can't fire because they're not in range. And then I'm going to, I think, move this unit along the river, but onto this hex here, which differs. Okay, so this is the only real significance of roads, is that where they cross rivers, deemed to be a bridge, now usually obviously that is more to do with travelling that way, but even so, it's a bridged river hex and therefore deemed not to be a river hex as such, because it's got a bridge on it. So I'm going to move my infantry in there because it's more useful than this hex. Now that does put them in range, or does put this unit in its range. So a range of 2 hexes, so it could 1, 2 fire at this one, which there's no reason not to, of course. So the way attacking works is that you gather together the dice equal to the number of the strength, or the strength rating of the unit. Okay, so nice and straightforward for all units, exactly the same. Doesn't matter who you're attacking, which is different to Napoleonics, so you just take 4. So he's got 4 strength, so we take 4 dice. And then there are lots of modifiers, as there were in Napoleonics, some of which are similar. I've tried to keep things similar to that game for those that have played it, but they're not all the same. Now he would, if he was in a river hex, then he'd have lost a die. But he's not, because he's in a bridged river hex. Okay, it's clear here, it says firing from an unbridged river hex. Well, he's not in that, so he doesn't lose that. What he does lose a die though for is firing after moving. So they've moved and they've fired, so presumably, you know, they're moving, they've got to then sort of get back into formation slightly or whatever, and that's going to just take away from their efficiency. So they lose 1 die for moving, and that's it. The unit they're attacking is not in trees, which would have taken another die away, for example. So that's okay. We also have clear line of sight. Line of sight runs from the centre of the hex you're in to the centre of the other hex. You don't need string or anything like that. The ranges are not long enough to create any kind of problems. Clearly, this line of sight here is going through that hex and into that hex. That's a clear hex, and that's a clear hex. You know, individual trees like this are just for aesthetic purposes. Just ignore them completely. You know, it's only these that don't block line of sight, but they take a die away for going through or into them. So that's a clear line of sight to him, so you would roll 3 die. Now if we look at this chart here, it says infantry, and just reminding you that you can move then attack. And you can see the results here. And again, it doesn't matter who you're firing at, the result's always the same. So 1, 2 and 3 are misses for infantry, a 4 is a retreat, and a 5 and 6 is a hit, which I think from memory was the same in Napoleonics for infantry. So we're going to roll those 3 dice that this unit has, and we get 1, 3, 3. So in typical Mike fashion, I get 3 misses. So no damage is done to this unit. So we'll leave that there for now. That's the end of my turn. So I've shifted a couple up, or 3 up, and I've had a pop, but nothing's happened yet. So then we go to the AI, and they start in exactly the same way. So they roll 3 die, and again, place them on the numbers as relevant. Okay, now because they have no duplicates and no columns with no units in, they will stick with what they rolled. Okay, so that's all. You don't have to think for the AI as ever in my games. You never have to think, oh, what's best for them. Whatever dice they roll, if that area has a unit in it, one of their own obviously, then they will allocate that dice to that column. If that had been a 1, again, duplicates are no use, they would have re-rolled that. And if they'd re-rolled it and got a 5, then because their general is still alive, they could have re-rolled that again and trying to get a 2, 3 or 6. But as soon as they land on an area that has a unit in it, they will lock that die. Okay, so again, the way that works is slightly different to Napoleonics. I think in Napoleonics, they used to allocate dice to empty columns. They don't do that anymore, unless it's on the final roll and they roll an empty column, of course, or they have to. So they've rolled those 3 anyway. Now the AI will, as in most of our games, activate from left to right and from bottom to top, if you like, nearest the player to highest up. Okay, so they'll activate area 1 first with unit 4, infantry, the infantry 4 strength infantry unit there. So we look at the AI instructions, we've got infantry 4 here, and there's often a couple of instructions to try before you then roll a die to see what they do. So it says CC, which is close combat. Yeah, it says close combat with a unit on the same hex. Well, it's not in close combat at the moment. There's no unit on its hex with it. So that's just to say that, you know, if it ever is, obviously it will do that first. If not, then try to move into and close combat with a unit on an adjacent hex. So should say about moving, by the way, the blue number is the movement. So you can see infantry and artillery move 1 hex, whereas the general and the cavalry move 1 or 2 hexes. The general is deemed to be a cavalry unit for attacking purposes and movement and so on. So it can't move onto an adjacent hex. Now, again, this becomes so intuitive once you get going. You know, straight away, for virtually every battle, the AI will always try to close combat with anybody on its own hex and then close combat with anybody it can reach. Well, it clearly can't do that at this point. It will usually be very obvious. Here it says next, attack the nearest possible. And again, it can't do that because there is no unit in range and line of sight of that infantry unit, which has a range of 2 hexes, remember. So then we get to the die roll section. We roll the die. This is never re-rolled. You roll the die and you must try and do, to the fullest extent possible, the instruction listed next to that die roll. And say if you can't do that, end of activation for that unit. You never re-roll this dice at this point. So it's got 1 to 3, roll a 2. So it's if positioned on top hex, which it is, move straight down, and you know the explanation is all very clear. Straight down means exactly that. It will only move straight down, which means to that hex. So if there was another unit already there, it can't do that. It wouldn't move. And then attack the nearest possible. But still, there is nobody in range, so it can't do that, and it ends its activation. There is a difference, quite an important difference between this and Napoleonics. And apologies for anyone who hasn't played Napoleonics, but I just want to be clear. It sort of helps with the explanation for those who have. In Napoleonics, you would only ever do the second action if you did the first action. Here, that's not the case. Here, you try to do as many as you can in the order stated. So this unit will move straight down, which it did, and then try to attack, which it can't. But even if it couldn't move straight down, it would still try to attack. Now, it's not that important because we know it's already tried to attack before, so we knew it can't do that. But in some battles and some instructions, that is important. So it's always worth just remembering that you work through, usually there's only 2. So it's irrelevant whether they perform the first bit of the action or not. You always go on and try the second bit if there is one, and the parts of instructions are always separated by a colon. So that can move, it can't attack, end of turn. Artillery then, slightly different, go at the top here. In this case, it's only got 1 instruction. There's no move instruction, so their artillery is never going to move. And the reason for that, of course, is that the AI is very much on the defensive here. In some battles, it will come after you. In this one, it's not. It's going to sit tight. It's protecting its general. It's on high ground. Why would it move? It says attack the nearest possible, but it can't attack anyone because its range is 3, and that just doesn't reach to any of these units. So that won't do anything. There's 2 units in this column. There are 2 units in this column, so we're going to start, remember the one furthest down. So we start with the infantry. That says, again, close combat any unit on the same hex, can't do that. If not, move into and close combat any unit around it. There isn't one. And then it gets to this one here, which says attack the nearest possible. So we will do that. It's a 4 strength infantry unit, so it starts with 4 dice. This unit is the one it's attacking, of course, because that's the only unit in its range. Okay, there are tiebreakers in here, so let's have a quick look at those. They work just like they do in a lot of my other games. Attack nearest possible, it says AGIC, so you always take the nearest unit, and that's that one. Okay. Now, for example, if there were 2 units like that, it would attack that one because it's the nearest, and then you'd have to worry about the other one. It's already found its target. But if there were 2 units equidistant away, like here where there's 2 units 2 away, then you'd look at this. It would prefer to attack artillery, then the general, then infantry, then cavalry. They're both infantry, so that doesn't help. So then it says TB2, so you just go down to this table here, and it says, then in that case, attack the one that results in the most attack dice being rolled, and then the one that's the strongest, and then the one that's furthest up. So in that case, that's that one. It's always furthest up from the player's perspective. Okay, but it hasn't got a choice here. There's only that one it can reach, so it will attack that one. As I say, start with 4 basic dice, which is for strength. And then what you should do is add any dice first that it gets for bonuses, and then detract any that it's going to lose. So let's look at the modifiers again and see what applies here. This infantry is firing. It says any unit firing when adjacent to the general. Well, he is adjacent to the general, so he gets a bonus for that. He gets +1 die. Okay. However, it is in an unbridged river hex, and we know that firing from an unbridged river hex is -1, so it loses a die for that. And there again, they're the only modifiers that apply here, because I'm not in a hex which gives me any cover, and there's clear line of sight. There's no trees here to take away dice or anything. So he gets 4 dice, which is a bit of a shame. And he's attacking my infantry here. So he's rolled 2 4s. And a 1 and a 3. They're misses, of course, so ignore those. But he has got 2 4s. Now, a 4, remember, for infantry attack is a retreat result. So my unit is now going to have to retreat. And in this game, and again, this is different to Napoleonics, retreat is only ever straight back down the same column. So I have to retreat 2 hexes. So the first retreat, there's nothing stopping me, so I'm going to go like that into there. And then my second retreat would take me off the board, and in that case, because I can't retreat, and the same would apply if, for example, I couldn't retreat because you'd only have 1 unit on each hex, so there I wouldn't be able to retreat. And again, because there's a unit there, so if you can't retreat for any reason, which I can't, you would usually lose 1 strength as if you had been hit, so that would be reduced to an infantry 3 unit. However, as soon as a unit comes adjacent to a general, they do not retreat anymore. So that 4 is ignored. So the double retreat actually is only 1 retreat, because as soon as I've retreated once, I'm next to my general. Again, that is different to Napoleonics, where you only didn't retreat if you started your retreat next to the general. But here, as soon as you're next to general, you stop your retreat. Okay, so in other words, a potentially routing unit is rallied by the general. So, where are you going, guys? Get back into the battle, kind of thing. So he's activated, and then we go to the general here, who isn't going to be able to do much. He's hemmed in there, so he's certainly not going to move. So again, it starts with the close combat, any unit on the same unit hex as himself, which there isn't. There's then a condition to the next one. It says if the turn counter is greater than 5, or on turn 1, so it's not, then he might start moving around. Next, he'll move into close combat, but only on an adjacent hex, even though he can move 2 hexes. It's the instruction specifically says he'll only go adjacent, but again, there's no enemy unit there. And finally, this instruction is basically trying to get him to be. Hang on, is it? If the general is not in a hex which is adjacent to, in the same column as, and oh no, it's not, sorry, slightly different. So this is battle specific, this one. It's trying to get him behind an infantry unit, basically, for protection. So it says if the general is not in a hex which is adjacent to, in the same column as, and directly above a Union infantry unit, then try to do that. But he already is, so we don't need to do that. Yeah, he's in the same column as this one, same area. He's directly above it, and it's an infantry unit, so he's going to stay where he is. So he won't activate. And that's the end of his instance. No more instructions to try. As soon as you get to an instruction that works, a box that works, you stop. You do all the parts within that box, but when, again, the rules are clear on this. When you get to, as soon as you do something, you stop. So as soon as a unit moves or rolls some dice to attack, then they end there. They don't move on to the next instruction. They just stop there and do anything within that instruction, but no more, kind of thing. That's into their turn. We move to turn 2. Okay, so let's try speed up a little bit. So I'm going to roll 3 dice here, of course. I've got a 3 and a 5 and another 5. Okay, so obviously the 3 isn't, the duplicate 5 is no good to me. The 3 is no good to me because there's nobody in area 3 for me. I've got this 5. I'm probably going to take him back up there again and carry on the little mini battle with him. So I'll stick with the 5, re-roll these 2 dice. And that gives me a 3 again, which is a shame, and a 4. I'll take the 4, I think, and I'll re-roll, because my general is alive, I can re-roll for a 3rd time, so I'll re-roll this 1 die, and I get another 3, believe it or not. So that's no good to me. So that time I'm being a bit unlucky, but I'm only activating 2 areas, and the units within those areas. So again, I can do it in any order I like. So I think what I'm going to do is start to push up just to show a bit more of how this game works. So I'm going to push this infantry unit up there, and then I'm going to fire at this infantry unit. Okay, so I've got 4 basic strength for my infantry unit, but they move. There's nothing adding any dice to them. They're not adjacent to the general anymore because I moved away from him. Remember, they're now firing after moving, so they lose 1 die there. They're also now firing through a tree's hex. Okay, so their line of sight clearly goes through there. So any unit firing through intervening trees, -1. So I lose another die for that. So I actually only get 2 attack dice here for him. So I'm going to fire at him. And also he's next to his general, remember, so 4 results, retreat results, are going to be irrelevant here. So I'm really looking for 5s and 6s. I just want hits. And I get a hit. Okay, so the 4 is ignored. You always do hits first, so let's deal with that first. So 5 and 6 is a hit, 6 is a hit. So that's going to reduce this infantry 4 unit down to an infantry 3 unit. So I just replace the counter like that. The 4 then would have him retreat, but as I say, he's adjacent to his general, so he won't do that. My general, I'm going to move up. Okay, I'm going to move him up into these trees because A, that's a safer place to be, and B, he's still out of range of their units. So reasonably safe. Out of range of the infantry, out of range of the longer firing artillery. And then finally I'm going to move this up. Okay, in fact, there's another reason I move the general there, is to have him adjacent to my general to get the bonus. So I'm going to move him up to there. Remember, when I activated column 4, I had to activate both of those units completely before I move on to the next area. And I can do them in any order again, not like the AI who does them in certain orders. I can do them in any order. I'm going to activate area 5 now with this infantry unit. I could move him into here, but he would be in an unbridged river. Although he would get a bonus die for firing at range 1, so infantry firing at range 1 get an extra die. But for now, I'm going to keep him back here so I can use the general bonus as well. So let's have a look. I get 4 dice. He hasn't moved. Or did he move? I'm talking so much, I've forgotten what he did. Was he back here? He was, wasn't he? Because he got pushed back to retreating. Yeah, sorry, cancel that. So he's moved to here. I can't move him there, of course. Can only move 1 hex. I think I'm right. He moves to here. Sorry about that. 4 dice he can fire with. He's not in an unbridged river, so he won't lose that. He will lose 1 die for move. Sorry, he should gain first. He gains 1 die for being next to the general, and then he loses 1 die for having moved before firing. And again, that's the only thing we're going to see here. It's clear line of sight, so we get 4 dice, and this time slightly better. We've got 2 misses. We do have a hit, so we can reduce him to a unit, an infantry 3 unit. But again, unfortunately, the 4 means he won't retreat. Now, that ability of the general to prevent retreating is really important, because obviously if that was a different unit, he would be losing strength because he can't retreat. So the position of your general as a supporting unit is really important, and particularly when you're facing artillery fire, for example. So if you look at the chart here, when artillery fires, it only hits on a 6, but it causes a retreat on a 3, 4 or 5. So, artillery fire was pretty horrendous in the American Civil War in terms of causing panic and terror, particularly amongst fairly, young or inexperienced troops, and was a cause of a lot of routing units. So I've reflected that by having, you can get big retreats if artillery, particularly if it's on a hill and it's firing and it's a next retreat, can roll up to 4 dice if it's in the right situation, like this one is here. And that can often cause, 2, 3, 4 retreats. So having your general next to them negates all those retreats. So to some degree negates the effectiveness of artillery. So again, it's really important. Although it seems like a simple game, there are quite a lot of nuances in there that you've got to think about. And positioning your general is one of those, along with activating the right columns at the right time. So that's my turn 2. Let's move on to the AI's turn. So they've rolled 2, 3, 3. Remember, you place these always. You never think, oh, would it be better to re-roll or whatever. We're going to place those at the top of the columns that have units in them. We're going to re-roll the 3 because it's always a 2. I can't remember. It's a duplicate anyway. So re-roll that. Always do it for the first time, remember. And there are units in 5, so we'll stick with that. And they would again get a 3rd re-roll like I do, as long as their general is alive. So then we're going to activate left to right, remember. So this infantry 4 unit here is going to try and close combat. Can't do that. It can't attack from there. No one's in range. It can't close combat. It can't move in close combat. It can't attack from there because no one's in range. So we roll a die, see what it does. It gets a 6. And that says move straight down. Okay, there's no conditions about that, about where it's positioned. It will always just move straight down. So we'll do that, move straight down to there, and then attack the nearest possible. Okay, so it's got 2 in range here. Remember, its range is 2, so it could shoot. It could fire at either of these 2 units. They are both 2 away, so they are both the nearest. Okay. Now, when it says nearest possible, it means that it can actually possibly attack them. After all the modifiers are applied, are there any dice left to roll? If there aren't, then you would ignore the one that causes. So, for example, if this was quite a weak infantry unit, only firing 1 or 2 dice, and you were firing through a couple of trees, through one trees into another trees, or if it had moved and then fired, which it has, you would then lose those dice in the modifiers. It wouldn't fire any dice. But if there was another unit that wasn't in trees, then it may get a dice for them, so it would choose that one instead. So, again, nice and clearly explained in the rules. So it's moved down, and it's going to attack the nearest possible. It's got these 2, so we'll have a quick look at the tiebreakers. The type of unit is not going to help because they're both infantry. So we go to table 2. It says that results in the most attack dice. So how many attack dice are going to roll? Well, it's going to roll 4. It gets an extra 1 for being on higher ground than its target. That applies to both of those. But it loses 1 because it moved, and again, that applies to both of those. They're both in clear line of sight. There's nothing blocking. They're not in trees or anything. So in fact, it's going to, whether it attacks that one or that one, it's going to roll 4 dice. So the next tiebreak is to attack the strongest unit. Well, they're both infantry 4, so that doesn't help. So then finally we attack the one that's furthest up the map. And if you ever don't get a tie, if it doesn't ever resolve it, then just choose randomly by throwing a die. But that happens very, very rarely in this game. So he's going to attack this infantry 4 unit here with 4 dice. So I'll roll those. And he's got 3 misses and a hit. So that reduces my infantry unit down to a 3 strength unit. And that's his turn done. Now his artillery unit is, remember, it doesn't want to move, it's going to fire. So there was always a risk to move him there. Kind of hoped that that wouldn't activate, although he was in range of both of those units, but yeah, got to take some risks. So this artillery is firing, but I am next to my general, remember, as well, which is going to help negate that. He is going to attack the nearest possible. We can only attack this, and his range is 3, so he's the only one that's in range. So he's going to attack this guy, or this unit. He gets 2 attack dice because he's a strength 2 artillery unit. However, he is on higher ground than the infantry, so he gets an extra 1. And it doesn't matter that he's on double high ground. The only thing that the second layer of higher ground helps with is line of sight when firing over other things. But we'll leave that for now until we need it. In fact, it may come to play now. He's not next to the general, so he doesn't get that one. So that's it for him. So he gets 3 dice. Now, line of sight for him is coming from the centre of that to centre of this. Now that will always, as again, nice and clear, there's lots of diagrams in the rules about this, that sort of line of sight there for 3 hexes will always pass through that one and that one into that one. And if you draw a line down there, it comes through there, into this one. It doesn't touch that hex or that hex. Okay, it's to the right of that one, it's to the left of that one, if you like, straight down there. And I could, if you like, just put a ruler on there to prove that, but it's probably not necessary, particularly if you played any kind of war game before that has line of sight rules like this, just like that. And if you look down the camera, you might not be able to see that very well. Too much shadowing going on, isn't there? But hopefully you can see that that clips or goes through center of that, it kind of goes through those 2 hexes, that one and that one. Okay, so he is then potentially firing through these trees to get to me here. Okay, so we'd lose a die for that. However, because he's on second highest ground, second layer high ground, he can fire over these trees. So basically there are 2 layers of height in this game. There's the first layer of high ground, and there are trees and there are buildings or towns, and they're all deemed to be at that same level. Okay, so if you're on first level high ground, you are still going to be firing through trees. You're not firing over them because the trees are the same height as that high ground. Again, there are profile diagrams in the rules that can help you to see how that works. Okay, but because he's on second layer higher ground, he can actually see over these trees into this hex here, so he'll get the full 3 dice. Okay. Units block line of sight when they're on the same level, but once you're on higher ground, just 1 layer of higher ground, you can see over a unit without any problem, because people obviously are not as high as trees and buildings. So you only have to be on first layer high ground to see over the unit that's between you. So if there were a unit there, these 2 units could still attack each other without that being a hindrance. Okay, let's do this attack from the artillery. Okay, oh wow. Okay, so AI starts to roll well. He gets 2 hits. Remember, artillery, it's only a 6 that hits, so he's actually got 2 of those, and then 5 is a retreat. So let's take 2 chunks out of my infantry, and they're going to be reduced from 3 down to 1. And then they would retreat using the 5, but I've got the general adjacent to me, so he's going to prevent that happening. So that's the end of that. Still unlucky there, I think. Then in area 5, this unit here, let's quickly work through. He can't close combat, he can't move to close combat, and therefore he will attack the nearest possible, which is going to be this unit or this unit. He's going to attack with 3 dice. They are both as near as each other. They're both infantry, so that doesn't help. And again, if we go to table 2, he wants the unit that gives him the most dice. Well, he's not firing through any trees, so this attacking him is clear line of sight. Attacking this unit here, when you're at 2 hexes away and you're firing like that, you're deemed to be firing, obviously, center of that hex to center of that hex. You're firing right down the join of these 2 hexes here. So you always take, or he's firing that way, I should say, down the join of these hexes. You always take the one which is the most beneficial to the attacker. So therefore, it's deemed to be firing through the clear hex. Okay. If, for example, there was a unit there and he wanted to fire at that, probably wouldn't happen very often in many battles, but if he did, if he fired at that unit, this would be blocking line of sight, so the line of sight would be deemed to go through the trees, and he would therefore suffer a penalty for that. But because that's a clear hex, that's clear line of sight. Okay, so that's clear line of sight, that's clear line of sight. And therefore he would fire, he would be rolling 3 dice potentially in both cases. In fact, he gains 1, of course, for being next to his general, and he loses 1 for being in an unbridged river hex. So he's firing with 3 dice. It's going to be the same for both. So therefore we go to the next test, which is the strongest. So he's going to fire at the 4 infantry and roll the dice, and he gets a miss and 2 hits. Remember, for infantry, 5 and 6 are hits. So that is going to reduce my infantry to 2, and things are going wrong pretty quickly already. The general up the top there we've seen before, in that position won't do anything because he can't close combat. The turn isn't greater than 5, so you don't need to worry about it. He can't move to close combat, and he's already in a same area, so he's already got an infantry unit directly below him, basically, is what that instruction there says. So he won't try to find one of those. And we move to turn 3. Go again. So let's go quick. 2, 5. Do I want to activate those? Well, he's not particularly strong now, but he's next to the general. I don't really need to, maybe I need to keep chipping away. I think I'll keep the 5. I'll keep this guy here as well, this 2, because I want to activate him. So I'll just re-roll this one. I get a 3, which is no use to me. My general's still alive, so I can roll again, and I get my cavalry involved. So let's think carefully what we're going to do with them. I'll just do this over here first of all. I think what I'm going to do is move this unit over here because I want to get towards it. I've just got to find a shot on that general somehow from somewhere. So I'm going to move my infantry over here, and then they're going to fire at this on the hill. So remember, it's a base 4 dice for him. He's got an extra 1 for being next to the general, but he loses 1 for moving. Doesn't matter that he's on higher ground. That just works either way. Gives him a +1 for attacking, but I can attack up there without too much problem. So I'm going to fire, and I get, for infantry, 2s and 3s are misses. I get a 6, which is a hit, so he's reduced down to 4. Sorry, down to 3, I'm talking about. From 4 down to 3, and I got a 4 as well, which means he will retreat. Remember, retreat always means directly upwards. He can do that back into those trees, so he will do. Then I'll come over here. I'm going to do this infantry here, and this time I think... No, I'm not going to move him, actually. I'm going to fire again. So I'm just going to fire. So he gets 2 strength, so he gets 2 dice plus 1 for being next to the general. He's not in a river. He's on a bridged hex there, so that's okay. And he's firing at this infantry unit there. Doesn't matter that he's in a river. Again, that takes a die off when he's attacking, but it doesn't affect him when he's defending. So I get 3 against him. And again, not so great. I've got 2 misses and a retreat, but he won't retreat because he's next to the general. What am I going to do with the cavalry? I really want to save them, if possible, to kind of charge. I remember he does 2 hexes at a time, so he's a good one to kind of charge in and kill that general when I get a chance, but there isn't really a chance. I'm reluctant even to move it forward 1 because it puts him in range of this artillery. Although they prefer to fire at the infantry, so he's got some protection. I think I'll just move him there for now, leave it at that. Leave it at that. So that's me done. Let's do the AI. Just to see how, let's just do this turn. I'm going to just do this turn without too much explanation, just to see how quickly it can actually go. So this infantry guy here, he can't close combat, he can't attack, no range, so roll a die. He gets a 1. It says if positioned on a top hex, which he is, move straight down, so he comes down to that one. And he'll attack the nearest, so he's going to go for these. They're both infantry, doesn't help, but remember we're going to look at the most attack die. He's got 3, plus 1 for being on higher ground, minus 1 for moving. There's nothing affecting line of sight or giving them cover, so that's not going to change anything. So they get the same attack dice. So we'll take the strongest. He attacks them with 3 dice. Gets a 3, 4, 5, which means I'm reduced to 3, and I retreat 1. Okay, so the AI turn is basically as quick as your turn. Once you know what you're doing, I think, fairly easily. Artillery, remember, it's in this game won't move. It's trying to fire. It can fire at me again, unfortunately, so it will. It's got 2 dice, plus 1 for being on a high ground hex. Remember, it's on a double high ground, so it fires over these trees, so shooting at me again. This time, though, it gets 2 misses, and the 3 for artillery is a retreat, but I won't retreat because I'm next to the general, so I'm fine. Finally, this infantry here can't assault, can't close combat, so we'll attack the nearest, which is going to be this. He gets 3 dice, plus 1 for being next to the general. He's not moved, so he doesn't get... doesn't lose 1, but he is firing through this tree's hex, obviously, into here, so he's going to lose 1 for that. And he rolls 3 attack dice. And fortunately for me, he gets a miss. And 4s, remember, are retreats for infantry attacks, so I would have retreated twice, but my general is there again, doing a sterling job in there, keeping the troops' morale up and keeping me forward. Maybe causing casualties, but nonetheless, keeping me in the game. That's the end of their turn. We go to turn 4. So back to me. I've got a 1, and a 2, and a 4, which aren't great. In fact, I'm going to re-roll all of those because I really need 5 to be active, I think. So I'll take the 5, and then I will take the 4 this time. I might even take this. I think I'll stick with the 1 rather, because there's a danger. They've got 2 and 6 empty now, so risk and reward. I suppose I could do with pushing him up though. I think I'll just stick with the artillery for now. So I'm going to do that one. He gets 2 dice for firing because he's 2 strength. And I'm going to fire at I'm going to fire at this guy actually because he's a bit out of it. He's not really done much yet. So I'm going to fire at him, even though he's not on. We're on the same high ground level, so I'm going to lose that bonus die. But it does mean I'm firing over these trees. Okay, remember the trees are the same height as the higher ground. So if you can imagine that in profile, we've got two units here that are both on higher ground, and we've got trees, the tops of which are just skimming the same level, so we're firing across over the treetops. So whilst that hex, I'm firing through that hex and that hex, remember, as we showed before earlier on with the ruler, we're firing through there and through there. I'm firing over these trees. If I fired at him, I'd be firing through the trees, because obviously I'm firing downwards. The tree's the same height as this. I'm only on first level higher ground, so my line of sight would go down through these trees, so I'd lose a die for firing at him. So I'm actually going to fire at him, which I wanted to anyway. With 2 dice, there's nothing that gives me any extra dice, nothing that means I'm losing a die. So I'll roll 2 dice, and hey, I get 2 misses. So it's only 1s and 2s that miss, and I miss them both. Okay, so I'll go over here next, I think. I'm going to leave that guy there, so I'm still not going to move him. Actually, do you know what? I think I'm going to move. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to start. I feel like I'm just being eaten away if I stay there. So I think I'm going to make a kind of desperate lunge at the general here. I'm going to push him up to there, and then try to attack this unit here. But I'm not sure I'll get any dice. So he would usually get 1 die because he's only a 1 strength infantry, remember. However, he gets, remember you add first, so he's got infantry firing at range 1. So I'm now firing at range 1, so closer range, so presumably more effective. So I get an extra die for that. However, I did move, so I lose that die for moving. But at least I've got 1 die to roll for him here. And I get a 6, which is a hit. So that is going to cause that unit to drop to 2 strength. And then I'm going to, which is really risky here, I'm going to push my general up to there. He's now in range of both artillery, but there are other units that hopefully they'll target before him. And leave him there. And then I'm going to push this infantry unit up to here. And he's going to attack them as well. So he would have 2 basic dice, remember. He gets 1 extra for being adjacent to the general. However, he loses 1 for moving, and he is now in an unbridged river, so he loses 1 for that as well. So just 1 die at him, and hopefully we'll get the same kind of result. We do, we get another hit. So 5, which is a hit, so a little bit fortunate there. But we've had some bad luck as well. As ever, you know, rolling dice. You get good results and bad results. Now my cavalry, do I also send that? I think I'm going to just go for it now. So my cavalry is going to move 2 up to there. And that's my turn done. This is a real kind of, you know, this is a charge basically. And you know, by the time of the American Civil War, although there are lots, as you know, most of you out there will know much more than I do about this, but there were still obviously many famous charges in the unsuccessful charges in the American Civil War. But generally, they were becoming less popular as a tactic because rifling had become so much better. That, you know, simply charging at well-formed rifle units would invariably lead to disaster. But you know, I'm trying that to see how it works in this occasion, hoping this will go down in history as one of the famous Lambeau's charge or something. Anyway, their turn. So what I'm hoping for now, of course, is that they roll low numbers here. It'd be great if he activates all his, you know, or the AI's units over on this left-hand side, leaving these, you know, at their peril, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, so it's not bad. It's got 2, it's got 3, it's got 5. Okay, remember, we don't think, oh, if it were a player, they'd re-roll them and try and get these. It's the AI, we don't have to think, that's what he's rolled, that's what he's going for. Now, who knows what his plans are. So starting at column 2, or area 2, we're going to activate this infantry first. He can't close combat, he's going to attack the nearest possible. Okay, so there are 2 in range. There's this infantry unit and this general unit. He will prefer artillery and then the general. So he's actually going to fire at my general, which is not great. So, you know, there's me thinking, why is he activating this column? Well, that's why, because he's going to take out the general from the back, and that's going to really weaken certainly my infantry. So he's going to get attacked with 3 dice. He's on higher ground, so he gets another 1. But he did move, so he loses. No, he didn't move, did he? No, he didn't move as well. Did he move? No, he didn't move. So he doesn't lose that either. So he gets 4 dice, which is a bit of a disaster, really. Same results occur or apply. So if he gets a 5 or a 6, my general is a goner, which is highly likely. He does get 1, and my general is gone. Generals never retreat, by the way. Okay, never retreat. So 4s would have been ignored. Unfortunately for me, he did get 3 misses, but he got 1 hit, and my general is taken out. And that's probably my silly fault, but there you go. I wanted to go for it. This artillery unit is again going to be able to fire. He's going to attack the nearest possible, which is this unit. Okay, can reach that one as well. We don't need to think about that because the instructions say to attack the nearest. So he will attack this unit. He's got 2 basic attack die, plus 1 for being on higher ground, but he does lose 1 because I am now in these trees. Okay, now the fact he's on high ground doesn't help when I'm in the trees, obviously. You can picture that, can't you? That if a unit's in the trees, even on ground level, they've got cover from those trees, regardless of the attacker being on high ground. So they're still going to have to go through the trees. So that is 2 dice for the artillery, firing at this unit here. And of course, now I've lost my general. All these retreat results are going to count. So my infantry goes 1, 2 back there. Okay, remember only a 6 is a hit, so I don't lose him, but he's basically out of the battle for a while. And by the time he gets back, he's probably going to be eliminated. Over here then, we've got this infantry unit. That's going to attack the... Oh, no, it's not actually. Let's look at some close combat. It says close combat unit on same hex. Well, he's not got a unit on the same hex. He's not already in close combat. It does then say, if not, move into and close combat a unit on an adjacent hex. So here we have, whilst I'm charging up, this infantry unit charges into me. Like that. Okay, now, let's leave that there actually to remind me the general's got to move. What happens in close combat, you just simply follow the same modifiers down here. Now, most of the modifiers down here apply when firing. So things like trees, rivers, high ground, all ignored when close combat, because they're on the same hex, of course. So it doesn't really matter whether they're close combating in trees or on high ground or on a river hex as they are here. It's irrelevant. So it's just not taken into account. So and neither is moving into battle in terms of losing a die for firing, because they're not necessarily firing, you know, they're bayonets on and in they go. So anyway, he still gets 1 die for being a basic 1 strength unit, but what he does get is, it says infantry in close combat brackets after moving. So, and here it says +1 brackets +2. So infantry units in close combat would usually get a +1 die. But if you've just moved into it, in other words, kind of got the momentum and charged into it, you get +2. So he gets 2 dice extra. So you can see how close combat is quite strong, really. If you move next to enemy units, you really want to destroy them. Otherwise, they're highly likely to enter into close combat with you. He's got 3 dice. The usual battle results apply. Now, once you're in close combat, you cannot move out of it voluntarily. You cannot fire at other units, and neither can other units fire at you. You're deemed to be sort of well, you are in close combat, so you know, it's difficult to fire into that. So let's do the 3 dice attack. So he gets 2, 4, 4. Remember, 2 is a miss for an infantry unit. The 4s are retreats. You do retreat out of close combat. Okay, so basically, I'm there, very brave. I mean, it's creating a story, isn't it? Really. There we go. Let's charge. You know, 1 or 2 look over their shoulder to see the general's just been wiped out, and then suddenly you've got the enemy infantry charging at you. So you think, nah, not having in this. So a couple of retreat results, and basically I'm routing. I've run away back down there, and that's the end of that close combat. If they just sort of hit me or had no effect, then we would just remain in close combat. And then obviously the players would need to roll a 5 again in order to initiate that close combat again. And on that occasion, they would both get 1 additional die each when they were fighting. Or the attacker would get 1 die, I should say, rather than 2, because they're no longer moving into close combat. But he's done that, and he's pushed me back 2 hexes. The general then, up here, it says close combat. You can't close combat there. We're not past turn 5 yet. It says move into and close combat. Can't do that either. So it says, if the general is not in a hex which is adjacent to, basically, infantry, in the same column as and directly above. So he's not. In other words, is there an infantry unit there? Yeah, in the same column and directly below the general. There isn't. It says select a vacant adjacent hex which is. Okay, so that is adjacent. It's vacant. and it is a hex which is directly above an infantry unit. All right, it's a very weak one, but again, we don't have to work out whether this is a good move or not. It says then move into it, so it will do that. Okay, if it was like that, it'd have a choice of 2 because both of those hexes are directly above an infantry unit, and the tie break would say choose the one furthest up, so it would have gone there. Okay, but he didn't have a choice. He's going to move there. Okay, basically for protection, but also to provide support to that unit. It's actually a very good move for us, that. Very good move. You can see that it's left a gap, and I might actually get a win out of this after all. It's not a good move for him, really. So maybe my charge was good after all. It pulled out their infantry and created gaps for me to get round to the general. Yeah, who knows? That's the end of their turn, so we're on to turn 5. Let's see what I get. I'm dying for a 6, which I've got. A 4 and a 2. 2's no good. Oh, will I keep the 4? No, I'm going to re-roll that as well. And I'm going to re-roll them again. 2 1s. I've got a double 1 again. So I end up with 1 and 6. But that's fine, because all I really need to do is take my cavalry and move 2 hexes into there. Yeah, as I say, this has been really quite lucky that, nobody attacked my cavalry. I put it there, it's quite dangerous. But nobody attacked it. This artillery would have, a shot from them would have been pretty disastrous, but they didn't. And as I say, my charge pulled this infantry out. Quite often reminds me of chess. This game sometimes when I'm playing it, in terms of trying to manipulate the movement of pieces and how pieces can move about and so on. I moved into there, and now I'm going to attack him. And because we're in the same hex, that attack must be by way of close combat. I'm a full strength cavalry unit, so I get 3. Now cavalry down here, it says cavalry, including the general, in close combat, you get 2 extra dice. Because cavalry are particularly effective at it, of course, charging into other units. But if they did it after moving, which I did, you get 3 extra dice. So I'm attacking here with 6 dice, which is the most you can ever roll in this game. Cavalry charge. That initial charge will get you 6 dice if it's a full strength cavalry unit. I only need a 5 or 6. I've got 3 6s there. Their general is dead, and that is game over. Now, trust me when I say it's not usually that easy. Oh, it's quite a low numbered battle. It's only battle 7. There are certainly tougher ones ahead. It's one I feel like I should win, and was feeling a bit embarrassed at one point that I wouldn't. But knowing how units operate and the strategies that I've developed through playtesting and so on, it's certainly doable. Okay, so that's how it works. Cavalry are quite strong, but they're also very prone to if a full strength infantry unit attacks cavalry, they can very easily be reduced to 1 or even altogether. So you've got to be a little bit careful with them. It's quite good to reserve them, keep them back, sort of as I did then, I guess, and use them when the chance arises. Particularly useful for picking off weakened and solitary infantry units. For example, if we had that sort of position, it'd be quite useful if he was over there on his own to some degree. Then it'd be you can use your cavalry to get in there and clear them off. You don't really want to be running into a big crowd of units. Chances are you'll get eliminated pretty easily. So that's how the game works. I wanted to make a game that played fluently, played fairly easily once you know the AI system. There are plenty of challenging battles ahead, as I say. Lots of varied objectives in the battles. Sometimes you're on the defense and the AI is coming at you. Sometimes, like in this one, you're very much on the attack. Sometimes you have to get units to certain positions, or you have to eliminate the other side entirely, or defend a position, whatever it might be, take a town or even a church hex or something like that. It might be your objective, or just to survive 10 turns sometimes. So lots of different objectives, lots of different varieties, and obviously a different map for every battle, and let's say individual AI instructions to go with it. So lots of variety. But I wanted it, as I say, to be nice and straightforward. It's a nice small area in terms of number of hexes. The counters are nice and big and clear. You know, it just feels like a sort of beer and pretzels type game, which I think is great fun to play. It throws up all kinds of, if I play that battle again, it's probably going to be entirely different how it plays out. So it's good just to play each battle a few times. You've got 20 in here, so take half an hour or so each time. Even if you only play them 2 or 3 times each, I think you're getting pretty good value for money there. But it's certainly one that, easy to set up, easy to learn, easy to play, and just good fun. Okay, I think I'll leave it there for now. I might put another video up at some point of just me having a playthrough of a game without too much explanation, just to, just show how the sort of variety works, but we'll see how that goes. Thanks guys, see you now.